I'm going to get started. I just started recording, if you're wondering what I just did, just to make it easier for myself when I edit this after. But the first question I'll ask each of you guys is, would you mind giving a quick intro? And Esther, would you like to go first?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Esther Olu. I am a cosmetic formulation chemist, and I also do a little bit of side commenting on Instagram at the Melanin Chemist. Nice to see everybody again.
Perry, would you like to go next?
Sure. I am Perry Romanowski. I part of a podcast called The Beauty Brains, and I run a website called ChemistCorner.com, and I've been a cosmetic chemist and formulator for 25 plus years.
Lolita, would you like to go next?
Hey everyone, this is Lolita Iyer. I'm also a cosmetic chemist, and I also do a bit of SciComm on my Instagram account. I go by my handle Skin Chemi. Nice to see everyone here, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Cassandra, would you like to go next?
Hi, my name is Cassandra Celestin. I am the beauty chemist on social media platforms. I am a cosmetic chemist, cosmetologist, trichologist, makeup artist, and I'm glad to be back on this platform with some amazing people. Bye.
And then finally, Stas, and also, am I saying your name right? Would you like to go next? And also correct me if I'm saying your name wrong.
Yes, you said it right. Hi everyone, my name is Stas Cherkov. I am a cosmetic scientist and also a founder of a cannabis beauty brand called Blunt Skincare. And I'm excited to talk about cannabis beauty today. Thanks for having me.
And so we are still waiting for one guest. So I'll just quickly introduce her and then hopefully she will join. Ali Hasbin, she's a scientist who focuses on cannabis research. She came on my podcast a while ago. So hopefully she'll be able to come back on this platform to have this conversation. So I guess my first question to each of you guys is, can you tell me the history, I guess, of CBD in beauty from your own perspectives and also your experience as a formulator? Stas, since you're the CBD formulator, would you like to go first?
Sure, yes. Just to kind of bring it back to the cannabis, to the plant, formulating with cannabis ingredients, it's been in the industry for a while, right? So we've been working with an ingredient called hemp seed oil, which is the oil that is extracted from the seeds of the plant. And as regulations started changing around 2018, that's when I started really hearing about the CBD. I believe it was at a trade show, not Cosmoprof, but at a trade show, like an indie beauty trade show. And that's when I really started hearing about CBD. And that was in California. So cannabis was just getting legalized here recreationally, but people were already familiar with like medicinal benefits and the entire industry of cannabis. So I started hearing about CBD cannabinoids, and I was like, what is all that? And I really wanted to kind of get more information on this. As I started researching CBD and cannabinoids, all I could get information on was hemp seed oil. So that's how I really started looking into knowing the plant itself. So I use CBD, THC as well. So knowing the plant itself, how it grows, I started really looking for CBD. So there was no suppliers at that time. So the only information I could get was from the cannabis industry. So I really got involved at that time to talk to farmers, talk to extractors, how they do things. So that's when I got into a whole, science of cannabis. I don't want to cut it short, but in terms of formulating with CBD, you do have a lot of options when it comes to ingredients derived from cannabis. The most popular being is CBD. And then when it comes to CBD, you have different types of CBD in terms of extraction process. And then now we're seeing more of the rare cannabinoids like CBG, CBN, CBC. So that's where kind of we are at now. So when I started formulating with CBD, I created a blunt skincare line really with the purpose of educating consumers on different benefits and different types of cannabinoids you can get for your skin, basically.
Allie, you've made
So-
it. I'm just going to backtrack because the first question that I was a little thrown off because I had a first question relevant to this, and I'm going to ask it to you to put you on the spot right as you enter the room. Could you also, how's it going? So I have already introduced you, and for anyone who wants a lot more, she was on our podcast, was it a year or was it 2 years ago? A while ago to talk about CBD.
It's about 2 years ago.
Yeah. Would you mind giving us an overview? So Stas just talked about briefly overview of his experience for the history of CBD and cosmetics, and then I'll circle back for the rest of the panelists. I guess you guys are panelists for this group, but the history of hemp and CBD in general, and then in science, and then topically. From your perspective as a CBD researcher or cannabis, are you doing cannabis or CBD specifically?
Ooh, I'm doing both. Yeah, so a lot has changed since our podcast. I will definitely need to catch up on that. But yeah, no, I'm actually doing both. I did start with an industrial hemp project, and I can talk about the history of that, especially in the US. I'm based in Tennessee. So the CBD and industrial hemp industry is a lot different in states that aren't legal for medical marijuana versus in states that are. But there's most of the same problems everywhere. So yeah, I can start talking about the history. So let's see. So at first, I was intrigued. So I'm doing my PhD on formulation and product safety. There's a lot of products that aren't safe in the market right now. So I do a lot of research on the problems that labs are facing. So when I first started looking into the topic and researching the history of it, I was surprised by the origins originated in Asia and how he actually came to the US. And there was a whole debate in marijuana versus cannabis and all that stuff, how to name it. And I was surprised to learn that it's really the same plant, cannabis, sativa. There's different strains, or not strains, sorry. Let me call it genus. Yeah, so there's 3 different, I don't know the right way to say it right now. But there's basically 3 main cultivars. We have, there's species, that's the word. We have sativa, indica, and ruralis. But right now, because the industry is so big and everyone's trying to have products that have the most amount of THC or CBD or whatever other cannabinoid they are looking for, most of what's out there is really all sativa hybrids that are basically all these species combined. And really what we should be looking at is the percentage, the concentration of those specific compounds, CBD and THC. So yeah, that was surprising to me about the history of how it got so stigmatized and the drug on wards and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm rambling. I don't really know if I'm actually answering your question, but I've been reading a lot about it. So I've been kind of taking a deep dive on how it got stigmatized and how, like, all the problems that came from that decision, how much misinformation is in the industry right now because of that too.
But recently, as we've seen in cosmetics, there's been a big switch from it being stigmatized to now everyone wants it in their products. CBD especially relevant to cosmetics.
With cosmetics, what I've seen is that a lot of the cosmetics that say or that advertise well, some of them do have CBD, but most of them just say cannabis sativa. And I started recently looking at the ingredient list, and it's hemp seed oil. So they wouldn't have any cannabinoids. It's really just they have hemp seed, which is the cannabis sativa plant. So I'm seeing a lot of that right now in the industry here. And with the products, cosmetics here in the US are well regulated as far as how like their quality control process goes. So they actually do the testing the way that it's supposed to be done, and compared to how the industry, like just recreational products, are handled, like CBD products in general. So cosmetics right now is working a little bit differently here.
Okay, and then back to the original question, your experience as a formulator, or just, I guess, seeing CBD in cosmetics, and perhaps you have experience working with CBD in cosmetics. Esther, would you like to go next?
So this is actually not my area of expertise. I was working at a company that dabbled in CBD formulations, but I personally have not worked in that area, so I don't really have a lot to say in this topic. But I've definitely been seeing like an increase, at least in like the recent years, of brands. I would say I know we're probably gonna talk about this later, but mismarketing see how someone was saying earlier, how the ingredient list maybe says hemp oil, so it doesn't really technically have any cannabinoids inside of the product, but they're using the marketing claims of CBD. And I think just CBD for like a while in general has been around for like a long time. I'm not really sure the first time I heard about it, but in the most recent years, like I said, I've been seeing it more in skincare formulations.
Perry, would you like to go next?
Sure, I would say that at least from the United States perspective, CBD was kind of introduced into the zeitgeist of the population around 2012, when Colorado legalized marijuana for recreational use. It had been legalized in 2000 by them for medical marijuana, but when it was recreational use, Oregon also passed the legalization, and now a bunch of states in the United States since have. But if you take a look at and if you take a look at Google Trends, and this is just a little tip for all the cosmetic chemists out there looking at topics, go ahead and look at Google Trends. Google Trends they give you the volume of search for certain terms. And if you go and look at Google Trends for CBD oil, for example, there isn't much activity until about 2016. You start to see something. It grows in 2017, but there's a gigantic jump in 2018, and it sort of peaked off in 2019. But that gives you a sense of the interest in this, and on some level, it looks like CBD is on the downside. I don't know what's taking its place, maybe microbiome or something. But I've been seeing CBD as the basis for products probably since around 2016. That seems about right, and it is an interesting ingredient to me because people want to create products with CBD, and they want to imply drug effects, whereas you can't really have drug effects in the United States. And so it has been a really gray area for launching products when you're featuring CBD, and I think it will continue to be that way.
Lolita, would you like to go next?
Sure. This was also not my area of expertise, so I'm learning from the founders here. And yeah, I actually have a question, Jen, if I can ask the founders, Stas. I mean, it will be great to understand. So when I'm looking at a CBD product, what should I, on the Inky list, what exactly would be considered a CBD product? Like what specific ingredients should I be looking for?
That's
Or
a great question.
Is there like a few maybe?
Yeah, so it's a very valid question for a lot of consumers. One thing for sure is we can rule out that cannabis sativa seed oil or hemp seed oil, it doesn't contain any cannabinoids. So that would be, probably like a good chunk of what's on the market. They use hemp seed oil. So what to look for in INCI would be cannabidiol, which is official, I think by now, official INCI name for CBD. And that's an isolated compound, at least 99% pure molecule of CBD. Rare cannabinoids would be, and this would be rare to see on the ingredient labeling, like cannabigerol, cannabichromine. There's a lot more. But if you're specifically looking for CBD, it would be cannabidiol for isolated compound. The other INCI names that are alternative, and now I can see a lot of cosmetic suppliers actually using this more commonly, is cannabis sativa flower extract. So the cannabinoids are really formed in the flower of the plant. So that would be the kind of the INCI. I have also seen some phytocannabinoid rich hemp oil. I think that ingredient comes from Europe specifically. However, I started seeing that less, because in 2018, I remember phytocannabinoid rich hemp oil was something that European suppliers were bringing into the US market. But I think by now our own, Colorado, Oregon, California, they started supplying the ingredients. So would be cannabidiol or cannabis sativa flower extract if you're looking for real CBD.
It would also say, it could also say broad spectrum extract or full spectrum. If it's broad spectrum, they would have removed the THC or quote unquote remediated. And if it says full spectrum, it should have below 0.3% THC. But that is the difference between those two things. And that can also have CBD. They just won't specify what cannabinoids are in that extract.
Yep, thank you, Ali. And it's kind of like in terms of INCI, declaring your ingredients on the INCI, it's still unclear for companies to do. So we're just using common practices and common sense when it comes to how to declare. And broad spectrum and full spectrum is really also helpful for a lot of consumers to navigate on how to choose and what to choose.
Definitely.
Cassandra, would you like to go next?
Yes. What was? I'm sorry. What was the question again?
The original question was
Yes.
your, I guess, experience with. I know you do personally have experience working with CBD, so I guess that, but also seeing CBD in the market and seeing the growth. And I think Perry highlighted that's such a good idea to do. Look at Google search trends. Pro tip. But do you have any comments to chime in?
Yeah, I started researching CBD for cosmetics back in 2018. I was working for a manufacturer. They wanted us to bring new products to their company, and the problem at that time was that trying to get CBD from the raw material suppliers was very challenging, because even with samples, they wanted you to pay like hundreds of dollars for it, and like I would say less than 100 grams was like $7,000. And so it took about maybe 2019 where I finally, I can get a little sample, a small, like a 1 ounce sample. And to be honest with you, that's not enough if you're doing R&D. That's not enough to really get the ball rolling to see, if you can make a commercial product that actually works. So fortunately for me, I was able to partner up with a CBD company and get all types of isolate, distillate, broad spectrum, full spectrum material in my lab so that I can experiment with them. And it's been interesting to see how it works in different products as far as formulations and also the after effect when you apply it to the skin or the hair. I feel, well, the panel that we use so far, I feel like it does work very well depending on the percentage. Our issue now with this product line, which is hair and skincare product line, is the regulations and how, this whole thing with the Farm Bill and everything else is going to move forward, and how FDA may change the regulations on it, also the state regulations as far as selling the product, and then digital marketing, labeling the product. It's very difficult to advertise CBD with digital marketing because Facebook and Instagram and other social media and Google ads kind of like block you from doing that. And so it's kind of challenging. So I'm really interested to see where this is going. So it's been a journey for me.
Yeah, and I guess maybe from the Canadian perspective, we still can't have CBD in cosmetic products unless they are sold in a special store, which requires specific licensing. And if you don't follow the rules, which I do see some people are doing, if you're listening to this and you're in Canada and not following the rules, you could face up to $1 million of tickets from the government. So the government is currently taking this very seriously. They are currently in talks. I mean, COVID's going to slow everything down to incorporate this into cosmetics, allow it so that it doesn't have to go through special regulated cannabis stores. I was at a Cosmetics Alliance, our equivalent to the PCPC in Canada, an event, and they were talking about the major hindrance for approving it was that Health Canada didn't see that there was enough evidence to even include it topically for a skincare benefit. I have a few questions based off of this because obviously we have to talk about the levels of evidence out there for like, is it even worth it to include CBD? But this kind of comes along Lolita's question. I want to ask it first before I ask that. Regarding for the scientists who have experience working with CBD, the challenges working with ingredient. Cassandra highlighted a few with respect to sample sizes you might get from suppliers, but also maybe stability. I know that is a big challenge. Is there a form that would be more stable or suitable or bioavailable in formulations? For example, looking at like a CBD isolate, comparing that to a full spectrum form, what would be better? Do we know? Is there a best practice? Does anyone want to weigh in on this question first?
I can. I think it depends on the product that you're trying to create. So CBD has been shown to have certain effects, right? Like especially anti-inflammatory. That's a big one for the cosmetic industry with things like eczema and acne. So the difference between an isolate and full spectrum would be that one just has that CBD, so you're only targeting like one specific mechanism, I can say. And all this is hypothetical. All the research is still, there's nothing done on like humans or anything that's like that I would say 100% sure this is how it works. But based on what's out there, the difference is that one is just doing one thing versus the other one, who full spectrum has all these different cannabinoids. You can have CBD, THC, psilocybin, CBG. Most recently, Delta 8 has caught up a lot of attention and is becoming trendy. So you can have all these extra things that now we're talking about an entourage effect, which is this theory where all these cannabinoids and other compounds like terpenes from the plant are interacting with other receptors. And now we're having this full body effect instead of just targeting one mechanism. So that would be the difference, and it would based on like, so it depends on what you're trying to target when you're formulating that product. As far as stability, the same problems are that we talked about in the podcast are there. The molecules aren't as stable, but there have been a lot of advances with formulation, using different formulation techniques. Like there's a lot of nano emulsions now in the market, and there's a lot of water soluble products. So the quality has improved a lot in respects to CBD, but it has decreased also a lot with other things. So I would still proceed with caution when you're using anything.
If I could just chime in here, a question that I have is just you mentioned some of the benefits of the ingredient there, but what I was hearing are would be drug claims in the United States. Are there any non-drug effects of CBD that could be talked about in cosmetics? Because anti-inflammation, anti-eczema, anti-acne, those would all be drug claims. So I'm curious, what non-drug effects might a CBD have?
Yeah, it's kind of goes back to cannabis industry where it is considered to be alternative medicine in a way that even FDA would view as mono chemical compounds, right? Like if we take CBD as a isolated molecule and we study it for specific disorders, or let's say for acne, or for anything that would be a drug claim, but given that this is a cannabis industry and it is a industry where it is an alternative for a lot of it's in a direct competition with the drugs that are out there. Let's say, I don't know, for pain management, for example, it becomes a drug, and regulating it, I think that's where FDA has so many problems regulating it, because for FDA to extensively research the dosage, and when it comes to full spectrum, you also have the entourage effect that Ali talked about. So it has added benefits from all these minor cannabinoids that are in the extract. So it becomes really challenging to say that it's not a drug, because all the claims that we have are driven by the cannabis industry and are drug related. So, to be compliant with FDA, you have to stay, so your claims can be soothing. You can't really make any claims about acne for sure. So, but you do have to kind of calm your claims to the benefits of, so it stays within the beauty space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no one claims anything. They just go on Google and look up what the effect could have. But like he said, most of the effects, people are interested in these compounds because they have a therapeutic effect.
And then Stas, back to my original question, which was around formulation challenges working with these materials. Are there certain types of ingredients that carry CBD easier to work with, maybe more bioavailable, easier to stabilize, or whatever, in your experience as a chemist?
Yeah, I have. So I've worked so far with a few different types of extracts from different suppliers. So definitely, as with any raw material, you would want to make sure that the supply is, where it's coming from. There is analysis, testing done. So definitely ask for CFAs. When it comes to full spectrum extracts, You would want to make sure that there's a potency level that you want to have it on a consistent level. Let's say CBD content could be anywhere from 40% to 75%. So if you're formulating specifically with the potent extract that it's 75%, then at least you would know how to claim it in the end product. The challenges with full spectrum oils, I think you have a choice between oils, which is like a crude oil, or distillates. So distillates are more of a purified versions of the extracts. So most of parts of the plants are removed, and you only have the 75 to 80% of CBD and plus 10 to 15% of the minor cannabinoids. So it's kind of it looks like a crystalline. It's like a gooey looking extract. So the only thing when you formulate with that, you have to really kind of heat it up a little bit and mix it to make sure it's homogeneous before you do anything. So that's kind of a tip when you work with distillates. If you're working with the isolate comes in a powder form, so it's very easy to work with. It's oil soluble with heat, so you have to apply a little bit of heat to introduce it into oil phase. But in terms of stability, it is, again, it depends on the formulation and the packaging that you're selecting. Normal stability study you would do. So when you're putting any samples up on stability study, you would need to have enough of samples to pull and do potency testing at each time point to ensure that CBD doesn't degrade over time, which in my experience, it's not really a hard, very difficult, like a retinol type of ingredient where it would, oxidize, or it would kind of, the potency would go away. I even have seen papers where storage of cannabinoids itself versus cannabinoid in the formula, actually, when you introduce it in the formula, the shelf life is actually extended, so it's more stable. But that's just in my experience.
Cassandra, would you like to chime in?
Yes. I'm so sorry. What was the question again?
Since you have experience working with CBD,
Mm-hmm.
are there any challenges you face as a formulator? You did highlight some of them with respect to actually making formulas, the stability issues.
Yeah. So my thing with the CBD is the different forms and the challenges of skincare and hair care products. So I've had existing products that are have already full stability, everything, and now we're adding the CBD, either isolate or distillate, and broad spectrum to the products, and you can see the difference. You can see where the formula may not be stable, especially light stability. By itself, in the light or whatever, it's okay, but as soon as you introduce it to the oils, the MCT, and then you put it just by your window, within the next day it turns pink. So we already know that's the issue. And with all the products, you have to have the right packaging to make sure that that the color doesn't shift. And then also with some of the ingredients, some ingredients are not stable with the CBD as well. And as he mentioned earlier, it depends who your supplier is and where you're getting it from. Because we had 3 different suppliers, and it was all isolate, and we got different reactions when we put it in stability, where one was fine, like for example, a shampoo for inflammation of the scalp, seborrhea, dermatitis. The formula is fine by itself. With the 2 brands that were isolate CBD, they started to separate and then the other one didn't. and the purity was supposed to be around the same. But then again, like a lot of these companies, sometimes I don't really trust them as much because I know they're trying to get their product out, and it's so hard to actually, synthesize CBD. You have so much of the flower, like you'll have like a pound of flour, next thing you know you have like 1 milliliter of just the CBD. Like, so I can understand why they try to push it, and I really don't really trust all of their C of A. So that's an issue too, because when I'm getting different reactions from batch to batch, then it's like, okay, now we're going to scale up within the next 6 months, and we really don't know what to expect, and we don't know which company to really go with. So that's been a big challenge for us.
Okay, so then it sounds like the big thing as a brand, if you're interested in including CBD in a formula, and please correct me if I mess up the take homes, but regardless of the CBD form that you use, it's really important to do a stability test to make sure that it's the potency is still there throughout the shelf life, and the packaging is very important. Obviously, there's supplier variations, and so adequately testing the formulations is going to be crucial.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even getting to the point where I'm telling my partners that I want to go down to their CBD farms and just actually watch them do everything and just really check the, C of A, because I want to make sure before we go into full production that we're getting the right quality of product. Because I just feel like sometimes some of these companies that they just really, push it out there because they want to sell it.
Okay, so then a follow-up question. Since packaging is so important, does that mean that if a company is packaging their CBD product in a transparent package, that the CBD isn't going to survive as well? What should consumers look for with respect to the finished formula past the INCI list to make sure that it's actually still there? We haven't even started talking about, I'm sorry, this is such a big question or a big topic. I probably talked to you guys for 2 hours instead of 1 hour. I'm sorry for asking so many questions, but the packaging, is there some types of packaging that will that consumers should just maybe avoid, or is that too blanket of a statement?
It's too
I
much
would.
of a statement right now, and that's the problem. Like she was saying, like they were saying before, there's a problem with testing right now too. So there's just so many problems with the industry in general that we have to be cautious with everything that we do. So my whole research has to do with the problems with testing. There have been found that there are some companies that were taking bribes and inflating the ratio of THC and CBD. So for the CBD industry, right, it's very important for them not to have THC. So they would inflate the CBD ratio to reduce the THC ratio. And there are products that had pesticides. So there were just a lot of issues with quality control systems. And I would almost say, from a formulation standpoint, if you don't personally know the owner of the supplier, then just don't even mess with them. So luckily there's social media now. We can vet people. Clubhouse has been really good for that for the cannabis industry. There's no restrictions when it comes to like fighting with an algorithm like we have to do on Instagram. So there's a lot of people there. I've recently met a lot of people who own processing and manufacturing companies, and you can easily tell who, by the way they talk, who is really about their quality control systems and who really cares about their product versus who doesn't, who is just trying to sell you something because it's where the money is right now.
Thank you, Ali. That's kind of what I've seen in the industry, right? Since our launch, it's when we launched, I wanted to have a product that there's isolated products and the full spectrum products, and we even have a hemp seed oil product to fight the weed washing. But you do get so much information. There's a half of the industry that is really convinced that full spectrum is the best way to go. Even Sephora has a standard that they would only accept broad spectrum, and they banned isolates. So it is very interesting when it comes to, kind of when people, the consumers choosing the product. The products, we use packaging that is transparent. We have done testing and adequate UV exposure. It depends, right? If you're buying product from the store that is not packaged in a box, it's directly under sunlight, probably any chemical would probably be, probably will get some sort of a degradation. But I think the whole UV exposure, kind of vitamin C like process, I think that comes from the way cannabinoids are formed in the plant. So this comes more from like farming industry. So throughout as you grow the plant, and there's a term indoor and outdoor. When you're growing plant outdoors, you have a different mix of cannabinoids. So the cannabinoids in the plant throughout as it ripens, the buds of the cannabis, the different ratios of cannabinoids will develop. So the farmers, what they do is they harvest at a specific time to yield in the highest at that moment demand of the cannabinoid. So I think the whole of that comes from that. Once you extract it and make it into a ingredient that is ready to formulate with, I haven't seen much of a kind of direct relation from UV exposure and degradation of CBD. So what for a consumer to look out for, I would say all cannabinoids are lipid-loving compounds. So they are, they're more in like, they want to be in the oil phase. So if you're looking at, let's say, a toner formula that has mostly water phase, that could be if the formulator didn't do the right job incorporating oil phase into a toner, that formula potentially can be unstable. So, I've seen a lot of these, the nano kind of emulsified versions of CBD, but that's really kind of, when it comes to water phase, I would just be very cautious about the product that you're looking at. But again, I would be biased because the first collection that we did, we chose oil just because it's CBD is naturally like oil loving formula. I mean molecule.
Now, I'm just going to quickly jump to my next question. I'm sorry, the pace that I'm asking questions at, or the amount of questions, should I say, that I'm asking is going to not give me enough time to ask some of the other questions that I wanted to ask, specifically around the evidence regarding topical efficacy, and then also around the whole weed washing thing. But I guess my next question will be to everyone in here, and maybe we'll start with Esther for this one. Are you convinced by the research available on CBD topically that this would be something that would actually have a meaningful effect in skincare? Is it worth all the hype? Or would you opt for a different ingredient? Why or why not? Sorry to put you on the spot, but Esther, would you like to go?
This is a little bit tricky for me. I think with the research that's out right now, I don't think there's substantial evidence that CBD is providing the benefits that people claim. I'm not saying this doesn't mean that it does not. I just don't think that the research is good enough to make that conclusion. And I do think there is definitely a possibility for people to show that it has the efficacy that people claim. And I also do think that it is a little bit overhyped. Just in general, I think there's like an increasing trend, like I said earlier, that a lot of brands are hopping onto like the CBD cosmetics train, and there might be a point where it kind of dies down. The hype dies down. And what else did you ask, Jen? I'm sorry. There's something else that you mentioned.
Worth all the hype, I guess, but also like for you purchasing ingredients, would CBD be something you'd look for, or would you go for something else?
For me personally, I would go with something else that has a lot of like clinical studies behind it, or even like, well, since I am in the US, like monographs, because that way I know that there's a lot of studies behind it, and a lot of evidence to support the claims that the ingredients are to support the ingredients that are being used in formulations. I just don't think that as of right now CBD has a lot of evidence behind it, at least for topical applications. But I think there is potential.
Perry, what do you think?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Jen. On this topic, first when you approached me for weed washing, I thought you had mistakenly meant greenwashing, but in fact you meant weed washing. And when I was thinking of weed washing, I just wonder who's doing which side is doing the washing. You had mentioned asking questions about potency of the ingredient, and I was just struck with the notion that does potency really matter? Because if it does deliver the benefits of the implied benefits of CBD, those are drug claims. And so maybe CBD is very popular and it's a good selling point and it's a nice claims ingredient. But if you actually did studies and were able to demonstrate the benefit, these would be drugs and they would no longer be cosmetics anymore. So it's a real challenge. And it's interesting to note, if you're looking at what the FDA says about what is the difference between a drug and a cosmetic. Now, a lot of times people say, well, as long as you don't claim a drug effects, then it remains a cosmetic. That's only one of the three ways that the FDA determines whether a cosmetic is actually a drug or a cosmetic. So certainly the claim, so you can't make any direct drug claims, and saying something like, prevent inflammation would be a drug claim. But there's also this notion, another test that they use is the consumer perception. So even if you don't make a claim about your product, if there is this general consumer perception that an ingredient in your product is a drug, then the FDA could say that, oh, that's a drug. And the way you're supposed to find out about your consumers and whether they think your product is working as a drug is you're supposed to ask them. And if you ask your consumers and most of them say, oh, it has drug effects, then the FDA would call this a drug too. And the third test that they do is if you're including an ingredient that has a well-known therapeutic use. And right now CBD doesn't have that, and that's only because of a lack of studies done to specifically prove or disprove that. And so it seems to me CBD in cosmetics specifically is in a really difficult place. And on some level, the people who are selling you CBD containing products with CBD oil that has lost its quote potency, whatever that is, they're the people that are actually following the rules, just with using it as a claims ingredient. The people that are trying to sell it to actually have drug effects, those would be the brands, I would think, that are skirting the rules.
Oh, I think that's interesting that you say this. Stas sent me an article that was the inspiration of this whole talk, which was really great. It was on weed washing. It was in Beauty Independent. But I was struck by there was a doctor in there, Dr. Amabel Manella. I think that's her name. I don't know if I said this right, but she was talking about I think she's a part of a brand, and she's talking about Stas. Perhaps you know this, but she's talking about CBD formulations for inflammation and pain relief should contain at least 500 milligrams to be impactful. So, like, also for brands, you can't make drug claims on the interwebs either. Like, that's not allowed. But I see this happening constantly. But also, I'm left wondering, like, do we know based off of the level of evidence out there that 500 milligrams, also what's the concentration, like what's the percentage in the formula, so like what's the size, depending, 500 milligrams will be different for concentration in a 100 milliliter container versus a 30 milliliter container, so perhaps a concentration indication would be more relevant. But also, do we actually know that a specific concentration will have a specific therapeutic effect? And probably Ali and Stas will be able to answer this, because I know you guys are so aware of the evidence. But before that, Lolita, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I was gonna definitely resonate with what everyone is saying here. And I also think that there are some brands like Blend Skincare, that's doing some really good work out there and putting in the effort to really research their ingredients. So, I think, the whole cannabis industry, like Perry had mentioned, it's in this weird position between a cosmetic and a drug, and what claims you can do and how much research there is behind these ingredients. But I think it definitely, I think maybe in a couple of years we'll with more research, and we'll definitely learn more. And but I do think that there are some brands out there that are doing good work to educate the consumer about the different types of cannabis extracts that you can use in different formulations, and what does cannabis even mean, and what's the difference between CBD and THC. And I think there's some good educational sources online for us to learn, but definitely agree with what everyone else is saying.
Sandra, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I want to clarify first when I mentioned the shift from UV exposure. It's not that it's necessarily a bad thing when it comes to the quality of the product, because it's also what you're using to dilute your CBD. And for example, I'm talking about MCT oil. So the thing is, when that happens and you have a commercial product and it shifts to a pink color, consumers are going to perceive that as being bad, even if it's not bad. And that's the issue that I had with my experience with some of the products formulating CBD. As far as like using CBD in the future and where I see in cosmetics, I'm going to, of course, keep working on this this journey, this project, because I'm invested in it, and we're going to scale up soon. So the experiment continues with different dosage levels, different percentages, different formulas as well. I know that we're planning to use this also in the medical industry. So for some sports medicine, we partnered up with a sports medicine doctor who's very interested in doing studies for sports medicine. So I'm excited about that, because I know that they'll actually put in the financial backing to actually do the studies to make, well, not make claims, but to know that the product is working.
Ali, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I have. Can you start with the question? I have a billion answers right now. So
Well, the question was around, like, is there really significant evidence that CBD topically at this point is going to have like a significant impact? Do we have that much? Like, what's the weight of evidence right now? Yeah. And I also had a specific question. I kind of forgot it because I brought it up. There was a physician, I think, talking about how so this claim that she made isn't really allowed. And I mean, if you're saying this in the media, then not quite in line with regulations. But anyways, she says that CBD formulations for inflammation and pain should be at least 500 milligrams to be impactful. And I was making a comment around concentration would be more probably helpful depending on the package size. But also, do we actually have the evidence to demonstrate that there's firstly a substantial impact topically, but also that there is the specific dosage that would be impactful? Do we have this evidence at this point?
Okay, so I'll start with the product stuff, I guess. And I'll start with the last question. So I don't know where to start right now. Okay, so I think as far as like personally, I look at evidence. I know that there's a lot of barriers to research and there's a lot of limitations when it comes to the studies that are coming out, right? So for example, a lot of studies have to start with product obtained from specific sources. So that right there, immediately, there's some sort of like limit bias. Like it's not going to be representative of the products that are out there. There is enough evidence for me to comfortably say that there is some sort of reduction of inflammation, that there's substantial evidence for me to like say that it could be beneficial. But then we also have to add the products that are available to consumers, right? Like most people, when they talk about CBD reducing inflammation, they say, I read a study that CBD reduces inflammation. That's cool, but what product did they use to do that study? What concentration was the CBD? How did they create that product? Like what other stuff did they add? Were there other things that could have like gone on there, right? So those are the things that I question the most. I personally do use CBD and THC. I find it very beneficial. It reduces a lot of my anxiety, especially I'm near the end of my dissertation right now. So yeah, I started using cannabis when I was in med school to reduce a lot of the anxiety. I don't go and claim that everyone should use it, but it does help me. So when I think about it, and that's actually how I got into the industry, because I was looking at it, I was fascinated by the endocannabinoid system. We all metabolize drugs differently. So I don't like making claims either way right now, because there's enough evidence to quote unquote prove that it could be beneficial. And there's enough evidence to show that we just still don't know enough. As far as that claim that the doctor made, I can see where that statement was made. There's a lot of, if you read if you go to, let's say, okay, if you know how all these drug products come with a sheet that has all this extra information. I went to the Piliodex information sheet and I read their concentration. I was curious to see what concentration they were using CBD at. And I came to a similar conclusion. I've never made that claim out loud. I never said it. I haven't studied it. So I'm not going to agree with her or disagree with her. But I saw that the amount of CBD that we're putting in these products, especially with the type of testing that we have right now, I can see why a lot of people think that this is like something that doesn't work, because a lot of products have also been found to not even have the accurate dosage from the label. Like you can get a COA, they tested the product and they found that CBD wasn't at the right concentration of the label said. And yes, there are some products the problems with formulation. Yes, they can degrade, but there's also a lot of other things affecting the products. So in general, I say proceed with caution. Make sure you check the source. I'm not opposed to people trying it, because I've seen that the products out there don't have a concentration that could be damaging to the general population. So I don't know. I'm in the middle with this one.
And Stas, what do you think?
I'm all the way in. Well, first I want to talk about weed washing a little bit, because that term actually was introduced by the editor at Beauty Independent, Claire. She was the one to say, like, there is a big what's happening in the industry, specifically in the beauty, and we're talking global, right? Like United States is and Canada on the forefront of legalizing cannabis medicine. So, but on the global level, there is big like millions of dollars are earned by selling hemp seed oil as a cannabinoid or as a blissful or something that will give you some sort of a inflammation, what implied effect. So consumer would buy it. It says cannabis sativa. They would try it, and it would be regular, right? It wouldn't be like completely anything different that they have tried before. So they would jump into conclusion that CBD doesn't work for them. So that's the weed washing, and it's actually done by a lot of big companies in the beauty industry too. So but that's on weed washing. In terms of actual efficacy of CBD, it's all rooted in the cannabis and the CBD industry. It all comes to endocannabinoid system. It's a system that is a biological system in all mammals, in all of us, discovered around 50 years ago. Something that researchers are just getting to know. So in a nutshell, it's basically we have cannabinoid receptors throughout our bodies. And has been proven that in our skin, we do have CB1 and CB2 receptors. So our skin is able to interact with phytocannabinoids, which is CBD and THC and rare cannabinoids. So our skin is able to interact with it, but at a different level. And as Perry mentioned, would be more of a considered as a drug level. So we're talking about sebum, oil production. We're talking about sweat glands, nerve systems, immune cells. And I was looking at the FDA website and Epidiolex data. So FDA has approved a drug for rare cases of epilepsy. And even for them to understand fully pharmacological pathway, how CBD would impact and relieve these children with these cases of epilepsy, it's not fully understood. So it is I think it's a new science for us. How it will translate into beauty. Obviously, within beauty, we're trying to address acne, dry skin, psoriasis, and many other skin conditions. How would that relate? How would that translate into beauty? I'm not so sure because regulations change all the time. But my speculation is it will be somewhat similar to kind of like salicylic acid, where it's like at a high percentage, it's a prescription drug. Then it's at like a mid percentage, it's like a OTC drug, and below 0.5%, you can use it in any product. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm definitely all the way in with cannabis for health, and skin is part of it. So that's my take on cannabis.
Jen, I did want to add, so for the topic application, like I said, as I mentioned earlier, the formulations are actually improving. So there are some transdermal applications that are promising, and especially when applied to areas that are very thin. So they're closer to like our circulatory system. So I thought that was kind of cool. And those are mostly like water soluble nanoemulsions right now that I'm seeing on the market.
Now, something that would maybe feel more, I'm wondering if this would be something that you guys would suggest consumers look for, although it'd be hard because some of the claims may be, certainly there are non-drug claims that could be substantiated. But instead of seeing as we know, percentage of ingredients in a formulation doesn't necessarily mean that the formulation will perform. the percentage may matter, but the formulation also matters. So that's really important. So something that I would personally rather see, I haven't really been paying attention to CBD brands. I don't know if brands are doing this. So please correct me if this is already happening. But to see substantiation, and I don't know if I'd really want to see like subjective consumer testing if they know what they're using, maybe like a blind testing, not knowing that they're using a CBD product, because placebo effect is real. But like clinical substantiation to substantiate some of the claims, just so I feel like it's doing something. Otherwise, I feel like, okay, there's growing evidence and that's really exciting. I'm a little unsure just based off of the level of evidence. It seems like maybe I'd rather use another ingredient with stronger evidence. Of course, I know that because of the drug regulations that has hindered research. So obviously that's something that we should be considering. The other aspect of this that kind of concerns me, and I'd be interested in your insights. Also, I know that we're over time, so if you have to duck out, feel free to duck out. But it concerns me that companies are claiming to be green, like not just in the weed way, like sustainable or whatever, and can cosmetics ever be sustainable? But they're claiming to have a lower impact, and then they're using CBD. It's my understanding that to produce CBD, it's quite intensive, like not like with respect to like the greenhouses that we need to, especially in like North America, if depending on where it's grown, like obviously there's open like on non-greenhouse production, but the carbon footprint of cannabis production in Canada is quite large. Any thoughts? Maybe I'm completely completely wrong with my thoughts right now, and also maybe I'm just like ignorant of what's happening in the industry. But Stas and Ali, or anyone else, do you guys want to chime in?
I can chime in from the industry side. So a lot of the evidence is coming from the industry side right now because of the barriers of research. We can't do anything in school, and it takes forever. Funding sucks, and it just limits what we can do. So my research is fully self-funded through industry, self-funded and industry sponsored. So I'm seeing a lot of data, a lot of researchers conducting, like a lot of people that are formulating products, actually hiring scientists outside from other industries. And I'm actually getting a lot of people coming to me to teach the cannabis science component, so more scientists can actually be trained in the industry. So because that data doesn't get published the way we're used to, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But that's also why I am more comfortable, because I'm seeing that it's actually benefiting a lot of people. I'm more skeptical because I'm seeing that not everyone has access to the same type of products. So I don't like recommending CBD as a blanket solution for anything, because I have no idea where that person lives, what type of products are available to them, how many labs, how the lab that tested. Like, there's just so many other things. That's why I take that middle stance always. I forgot the other part. But,
well, the other piece was around like the environmental impact, and like,
oh yeah,
doesn't really fit with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a buzzword in the industry right now because there's a lot of misinformation. So when they think about cannabis sativa, there's 3 different types of production or cultivation going on right now. There's the medical marijuana side, there's the industrial hemp side, and there's the drug type CBD that is indoor cultivations to produce to kind of control the ratio of THC. Because the plant produces this cannabinoid. Stas was mentioning it earlier. The indoor and outdoor produces different cannabinoid ratios because cannabinoids are produced from the plant as secondary metabolites. So the plant doesn't need them for any essential functions. So it's going to vary based on the temperature, whatever condition that plant is in. So when it comes to CBD products and that type of hemp, when they claim hemp CBD, now they're doing more resources, but they'll use we're growing hemp because the industrial hemp industry is completely different. And hemp plants are bioremediators and can actually remediate a lot of like metals, which is why testing is important too, because the plant can absorb heavy metals. So it's just, you have to be really careful when it comes to the marketing that people are using, because there are claims, but they just half the story that they're telling you.
Ben, I have to bow out, but I just want to just throw in my last 2 cents here before I leave. And thank you for organizing this, and thank you for everybody who participated. What I want to say about CBD is, I don't know whether the ingredient has a topical effect. It very well could be. It probably does, based on the descriptions of the science and things. The research just isn't there. But one thing I will point about the research that is funded by industry and such is that this is motivated research, and this type of research happens in our industry all the time. When you'll see a publication that X ingredient works. Well, in that study that they published, it worked. We don't know about all the studies they did where they show no effect. So there is that file drawer effect, which is very possible. So you have to be always careful of the motivated research. But like I said, perhaps this works. But I think the big hurdle with CBD is until there are some cosmetic effect that you're able to talk about, it's always going to be a difficult thing, because you're competing with companies that know the consumers respond to just the letter CBD on there, and they can put in soybean oil and has a dash of CBD in there, and we'll call it CBD. You're competing with those things, and you can't say any different claims than them, and that's going to be a big challenge. So thanks again, everybody, and I have to sign out.
Thanks, Perry. Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, but I don't think that has anything to do with like who funds the project in itself. So I disagree with making blank statements like that, because everyone has some sort of motivation when it comes to funding any type of research, right? My motivation for my research is that I'm curious about the industry and I wanted to fix some of the problems. So I don't like making claims like that, because it already puts a stigma to an industry that already has a lot of stigma. And there are a lot of good people who are actually trying to do things right.
Yeah, and Ali, I'll just jump in just based off of like speaking with Perry before. What I think that he was referring to is the research, which is it's not like the same kind of research I would say that you're doing, that sometimes happens with ingredient suppliers. Some of it is kind of sketchy, some of it isn't. But yeah, they are just going out of their way to prove their end goal rather than see if it's correct or not. Sometimes I see that with ingredient suppliers, but not always. I think that's maybe what he was referring to.
And I agree. That happens in every industry, though. So I try to make sure that I just wanted to mention that, because we have so much stigma, and there are a lot of people who are using these products, and adding to the stigma doesn't help them at all, and the products actually help them.
So we've been way over time. So I'm just gonna ask one more question to finish our cosmetic chemist dish that we do every week. Come back next week, 7:30 p.m. EST. And I'll also be publishing this conversation tomorrow. But do you guys have any final take-homes that you'd like to leave our listeners with? Stas, I see your mic's off. Would you like to go first?
Yes, I want to quickly just to answer the environmental impact, because I am not an environmental guru. What has the highest impact? Obviously, anything we do has an impact on the planet. But the good news is the hemp, industrial hemp, the way it's cultivated, it's from what I understand and I know, it actually absorbs so much of carbon dioxide, and but it uses a lot of water. But it actually could be very, very good for a lot of industries, even from creating like paper products, fabrics, better than cotton products. So there is environmental aspect to it, and I think that's what a lot of people refer to as being a sustainable crop. So and yeah, just wanted to kind of echo Ali's words that, although we are in the beauty industry, it is still, it's a kind of like on the in between of cannabis industry, and then you have beauty industry. So speaking about cannabis, it's been really, life changing for me, because we have to really talk with people that are directly impacted by cannabis prohibition. There's a lot of going on in terms of racial issues, specifically in the United States. I'm not sure about in Canada, but a lot of lives are involved outside of beauty. So it has a huge cultural and social aspect to it. So speaking of the cannabis industry, it's always I've been going about it carefully and kind of trying to understand all sides, who's coming from what experience. So, but it is a very good industry to be in. I got to know a lot of people personally, and I think they are really trying to, first and foremost, get scientists access to these CBD products or CBD ingredients, so people can research more and do the things that we do, formulate products. So that's my last words.
Quick follow up to Allie. I feel like you might know this. So, yeah, industrial hemp versus cannabis produced in a greenhouse is going to have very different environmental impacts. Now, is the CBD used to produce cosmetic ingredient? Like, would there be a difference between if we're using different CBD options in the formulation, whether it would be produced in a lab setting because it has that more controlled aspect compared to out in the fields with hemp?
We wouldn't know, but it would only matter if you want a full spectrum product, because now you have other things. But if you want something like just a CBD isolate, then it doesn't really matter where it came from, because the compound is going to be the same. As long as you have a well-formulated product and a clean product, it's going to have the same effect. But it does matter when it comes to broad spectrum and full spectrum, because now you're adding other cannabinoids, terpenes, and other things that now have a different effect because of the entourage and the other receptors in the endocannabinoid system. So Stas mentioned CV1 and CV2, but there's also other receptors that interact with these compounds as well. So
and okay, I'm so sorry. Quick follow up, because Stats, you mentioned that Sephora only accepts broad spectrum and has now banned isolates. So now the broad spectrum CBD that's in Sephora, this is going to be produced via greenhouse. Just want to be aware of the production.
Not necessarily. Well, so it depends on the brand. So I think the big difference, the industrial hemp, that's kind of what I talked about in the beginning. It's a phytocannabinoid rich hemp oil. So it would be an oil that is not so potent with cannabinoids. But what's happening now in the US, now that hemp is federally legal crop, people are cultivating cannabis plants that are considered to be hemp, but they are actually cultivated not for fiber or anything like that, but specifically for CBD. But the Sephora standard it's just kind of like a clean beauty movement. So it's more about like being, not having isolated compounds and going more natural route.
And I think they also specified the way of extracting. So I think I'm not sure, I need to verify this, but you have to pay attention to the extraction method when it comes to these extracts too. So anything that's extracted with hydrocarbons, then you have to make sure that those COAs also have residual solvent analysis done, versus something that's like a CO2 extraction that would just be cleaner in general. So that's another thing. And I think Sephora might have adapted. A lot of companies that are moving towards more medicinal uses are moving towards extracts that are produced through CO2 extractions.
Cassandra, would you like to go next? Final take homes that you'd like to leave everyone with.
Yeah, this is a very, very interesting topic, and I think it's going to continue to be an interesting topic. I've been approached by several people who I'm in the Washington D.C. area, and I've been approached by people who in DC and in New York also, who now are able to grow in their homes, and they want to, not only are they making, oral tinctures, but now they want to get into the cosmetics, and they're approaching me with, uh, uh, ideas that they want to pursue, and have me help them and consult with them with their formulations. And it's interesting because, one of them just bought a CO2 extractor, and I'm like, dude, like, it's not that simple. And and they're doing it at home, and they're using the what do you call it, the magic thing to, to clean, to wash it with ethanol and all that stuff, and try to get the the
Oh,
yeah, that method, the crude method, like, and I'm just like, okay, we're not making edibles here. But it's just interesting that they're trying to, get into the cosmetic field, and they're like, well, we have these flowers, and we have these extra pieces of the flowers, and we want to use them for cosmetics now. And I can just see, like, the DIYs, people are just trying to make all these, hemp products for cosmetics, and it's not, we don't know what we're getting. I mean, it's bad enough that now, like, some of these CBD companies, I don't trust them as much, and now you have people that are going to try to do this at home as well. And so I just want to say to whoever's listening, be very, very wary of that, because even the whole process with the edibles and the tinctures that people are making from home, that's not like an exact science. You don't know what you're getting. So just be very careful with that.
Lolita, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think I resonate and agree with what everyone is saying here. This was definitely a really good conversation. I learned a lot today, and I think we will, hopefully there'll be more, I'm sure there will be more CBD brands coming out later this year, as well as next year and in the future. So it's going to be interesting to see where the industry is headed in terms of the research, the evidence, the efficacy, and all of that. So I will just be here watching, and hopefully someday I'll get to formulate with CBD too. And if I do, then I'd love to share my thoughts on that. That's all.
And regulations. How will that change over the next 10 years in both the USA but also in Canada? Will we ever approve it for cosmetics? That's a question. Esther, would you like to go next? Last but not least, I think did I miss anyone? Sorry, it's late for me. 1 hour close to my bedtime. I don't think I've asked you yet, though, Esther. And also, if I've missed you, please let me know.
I don't really have much to say. I think this was a very informative conversation for me. So thank you to Stas and Ali and Cassandra for joining us, and just letting everybody know about, like, the aspects of CBD, because I personally do not work with CBD myself, so I don't know about all the nuances of it. So I just do hope, like, in the future that there's going to be more research and even innovation, and just the variety of industries, but especially personal care. I just want to see what's going to happen with it.
Well, that's a wrap. We're a half hour overtime, and we could definitely make that a full hour overtime. But we won't. And maybe Ali and Stas, and Cassandra, we can do a round table on the topic. That would be fun. So DM me if you're interested in that. And to everyone else, stay tuned for that. But again, I'll be publishing this conversation tomorrow. I have 3 pages of notes that I took down throughout this conversation. So I'll be doing a summary also on Instagram. So hopefully I do the conversation justice. But as always, there will be a conversation for people to tune into. Thank you, everyone, for joining in the conversation, especially to those who come week after week, but also to everyone. And you're welcome back whenever. And thank you to our audience for joining in as well. I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Night, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Dash. Thanks, Allie, Esther,
Nice to meet everyone.
Lolita, and Jennifer. Good
Have
night.
a great night.